The emergency beacon pierced through the silence of the Harmony's medical bay, sending David scrambling from his research station. As the ship's chief medical officer, he'd grown accustomed to urgent calls, but something about this particular alert made his heart race. The frequency indicated it was coming from the Zephyrian Quarter, a section of their multi-species vessel where few humans were welcome. David burst through the airlock separating the human and Zephyrian sections, his medical kit clutched tightly in his hands. The atmospheric processors hummed differently here, adjusting for the crystalline being's unique respiratory needs. The corridor walls, lined with prism-like structures that refracted light into dancing rainbows, would have been beautiful under different circumstances. In here, the voice carried the distinctive harmonic quality of Zephyrian speech, multiple tones woven together like a living symphony. David followed the sound to a small chamber where he found several Zephyrians clustered around a prone figure. His breath caught. It was Mino, the young Zephyrian engineer who had been working with the human crew for the past 6 months. Her usually luminescent crystal formations were dim, flickering weakly like dying stars. A massive crack ran along her left arm, where her crystalline structure had been severely damaged. "What happened?" David asked, dropping to his knees beside her. The other Zephyrians stepped back, their forms shimmering with anxiety. "Mining accident," one of them explained, their voice a worried chord. The excavation beam reflected off an unstable crystal formation. Mino pushed another worker out of the way, but David examined the wound carefully. Zephyrian physiology was still somewhat mysterious to human medicine, but he'd made it his personal mission to understand their unique biology. Where humans had blood vessels, Zephyrians had intricate networks of light-conducting pathways. A crack in Mino's arm had severed several major conduits, causing her entire system to destabilize. "I need to realign the crystal matrix," David muttered, more to himself than to the others. "But the procedure requires direct contact with her core pathways." The chamber fell silent except for Mino's labored breathing, a sound like wind chimes, in a gentle breeze. Among Zephyrians, touching another's core pathways was considered an intimate act, reserved only for closest family members or life-bonded partners. For an alien to do so was unprecedented. Mino's eyes fluttered open, swirling galaxies of color that had grown noticeably dimmer. "David," she whispered, her harmonics strained. "I can feel the light fading." "I can help you," he said softly, meeting her gaze. "But I'll need to access your neural pathways directly. It's the only way to guide the healing process." She nodded weakly. "I trust you." The other Zephyrians exchanged glances, their forms pulsing with uncertainty. Elder Kess, the most senior among them, stepped forward. "Human David, what you propose, it has never been done. Our core pathways are sacred, connected to our very essence." "I understand the significance," David replied, his hands already preparing the specialized tools he'd developed for Zephyrian physiology. "But without intervention, the cascade failure will reach her central matrix within minutes. She'll die." Elder Kess studied David's face for a long moment, then nodded solemnly. "Proceed, but know that you carry our trust with you." David positioned his hands over Mino's damaged arm, his modified sensors allowing him to perceive the intricate network of light beneath her crystalline surface. He began the delicate process of realigning the fractured pathways, his movements precise and careful. As his hands worked, something unexpected happened. David could feel Mino's pain as if it were his own, but also her memories, her emotions, her very thoughts. He saw glimpses of her childhood among the crystal spires of Zephyros Prime, her excitement at joining the mixed crew, her secret admiration for human resilience and adaptability. Then his hand slipped. Instead of maintaining contact with the damaged pathways, his palm pressed against her central consciousness node, the equivalent of touching a human soul. The connection that formed was immediate and overwhelming. For a terrifying moment, David felt himself dissolving into Mino's essence. Her thoughts, dreams, fears, and hopes flooded through him. But rather than reject the intrusion, Her consciousness embraced his, sharing something profound and sacred. He saw himself through her eyes, not as an alien intruder, but as someone who had risked everything to save her life. He felt her gratitude, her trust, and something deeper that transcended species boundaries. In that instant, David understood that his accidental touch had created something unprecedented, a neural bond between human and Zephyrian consciousness. The healing light began to flow more strongly, guided not just by David's medical knowledge, but by their shared connection. The crack in Mino's arm began to seal, new crystal formations growing to bridge the gap. Her luminescence gradually returned, warming the chamber with gentle radiance. When the procedure was complete, David carefully withdrew his hands, breaking the connection. The absence of her consciousness felt like a physical loss, leaving him momentarily dizzy. Mino sat up slowly, flexing her repaired arm. The other Zephyrians watched in amazement as her light patterns returned to full strength. "How do you feel?" David asked, professional concern masking his personal worry about what their brief connection might mean. Mino looked at him with new, understanding in her swirling eyes. "Different," she said softly, "but whole. And I remember everything." Elder Kess approached, his form radiating awe. "What occurred here today will be remembered in our histories. A human has touched the soul of a Zephyrian and brought healing rather than harm. This changes everything." David packed his medical equipment, his hand still trembling slightly from the intensity of the experience. "I was just treating her wound," he said quietly. "I didn't mean for my hand to slip." "Perhaps," Elder Kess replied, his harmonics carrying ancient wisdom. "Some accidents are gifts from the universe itself." As David prepared to leave, Mino caught his hand, the same hand that had saved her life and changed both their destinies. "Thank you," she said simply, but through their brief contact, he felt the depth of meaning behind those words. Walking back to the human section, David realized that in trying to save one life, he had inadvertently built a bridge between two species. His accidental touch had proven that connection, trust, and healing could transcend the boundaries between worlds. Sometimes the most profound discoveries happen not through careful planning, but through the simple act of reaching out when someone needed help, even when your hand slipped into uncharted territory.